Okay, we're going to do a play-by-play of the Avalon Hill game Gettysburg, the 1977 edition, and we'll be playing the intermediate level game. Now, the way the designer has set up the scenario, as in history, of course, the Confederates will be coming in from the Chambersburg Pike from the northwest and from the north and the northeast, and the Union forces will be coming from the south. Now, the way he set up the victory point conditions, Cemetery Hill is something the Union will want to hold on to. The victory points are there. So the Union can't follow a strategy of falling back south of the town of Gettysburg and down here, below the Round Tops. If they do that, they'll lose the game at the end of the first day. I think it's the designer's attempt to recreate the history a bit better, and I think it succeeds rather well. So we're going to follow an hour-by-hour play of the game, and let's see how it goes. Okay, the game begins on July 1st at 7 a.m. and the two Union brigades of Devon and Gamble are allowed to be placed within 6 hexes of the town of Gettysburg. So I've placed them out here on the Chambersburg Pike. And over in the upper left here we have the division of Heath along with the Pegram's Artillery Battalion. They come on the board from that edge, and they've expended 3 movement points as they come on. Or they have 3 movement points when they come on. Now, anyone familiar with the game will know that the strategic movement in this game is extremely liberal, very liberal. It's one of the most liberal strategic movement rules I've seen in any Civil War battle game. The infantry brigades can actually move 5 hexes in any direction they want. The terrain does not impede them. But strategically, they can move up to 4 times their value on the road. So they can move actually 20 hexes. Now let me just check that rule actually. Yes, that's correct. For every movement point expended, the unit can move 4 hexes on a road. And the roads don't even necessarily have to connect. They're interpreting the terrain very liberally here. So the Confederates, in theory, could outflank here to the west and to the north. But we're going to follow the general historical plan and have them come down the Chambersburg Pike. And of course, Devon and Gamble will try to impede that movement. It's probably the best movement anyway for the Confederates, because scattering your units is not going to be to your advantage in this game. So let's see what the Union does on turn 1. So at 7 a.m. July 1st, Devon and Gamble move first. Okay, on turn 1, Devon and Gamble can afford to be extremely aggressive because they know the Confederates only have 3 movement points. So they move up the Chambersburg Pike here, opposite this road, and at least 3 squares away from the Confederates, because we don't want the Confederates engaging with a full division, only 2 brigades of cavalry. So they're doing their job by interdicting the roads here and slowing Heath down and causing him to redeploy. Now I should point out that on turn 1, General Reynolds arrives, commander of the 1st Corps. Now he arrives on the Emmetsburg Road, right here at the south edge of the map. So this points out the liberal nature of the strategic movement. He's allowed to move 32 squares, hexes rather, because he's got a movement factor of 8. So he's just approaching the town from the south, while to the northwest, Devon and Gamble are opposing Heath's division. Okay, and there we have the Confederate response to the Union 7 a.m. turn. Heath's division is spread out. Each of these counters is brigades, and Pegram's Artillery Battalion has come up for support. So we'll move over to the 8 a.m. turn now and see what the Union can do. Okay, at 8 a.m. the brigades of Meredith and Cutler arrive from the edge of the Emmetsburg Road. So we're going to have them move 20 hexes up the Emmetsburg Road, and we'll have to redeploy Devon and Gamble to meet the thrust of Heath's division. Okay, Devon and Gamble fall back. Gamble is still interdicting the Cashtown Pike because they have to try to prevent the Confederates from using strategic movement down the pike. Devon moves a little bit further to the west because he has to watch out for outflanking maneuvers here on the Fairfield Road. Now the rules state that you can't use strategic movement within 3 hexes of an enemy unit. So Devon is doing his job here by interdicting this space here. Now, theoretically, Brockenborough could outflank here far to the west, but that wouldn't be the best move because the Confederates really have to stay together if they want to have combat. Note also that the Devon and Gamble have fallen back at least 6 hexes because the movement's 5. Heath can't engage Devon and Gamble. Devon and Gamble don't want to be engaged with a full Confederate division at this point. Reynolds, meanwhile, has moved up. Headquarters don't do a heck of a lot in this game, except for rallying. So we've got Reynolds just here near Seminary Ridge. And meanwhile, back down on the Emmitsburg Road, we've got Wadsworth's division, Cutler and Meredith's brigade, moving up to the vicinity of the Peach Orchard and moving north. So that's the 8 a.m. turn by the Union. Okay, this is the 8 a.m. response to the Union move. Heath's division again deploying in a long line opposite Devon and Gamble, bringing up Pegram's battalion of artillery. Moving forward confidently, Devon and Gamble now feeling a bit nervous with an entire Confederate division in front of them. So the next turn is the 9 a.m. turn, the Union turn. What will the Union do? Now, one thing I really like about this game was the level of research done on the order of appearance and the order of a battle, but more particularly the order of appearance. Now, at 9 a.m., the Union does get a new division here. 3 brigades, Paul, Baxter, and Stone, and Wainwright's artillery. But a lot of people may not know that Rowley's division actually approached Gettysburg on this obscure road called the Avalon Hill Road, and this game gets that correct. A lot of games miss that. Rowley was actually a little bit off track moving in from the southwest. A little bit lost probably. But this game got it right. Meanwhile, we've got Meredith and Cutler there. They'll be moving, and we have to see yet what Devon and Gamble will do in the north. Okay, this is a long shot of the battlefield right now. I do this to show you just how far brigades can move, because we've got Meredith and Cutler here down near the Peach Orchard, and you're going to be able to see just how far you can move in a single turn, which is the reason why you've got to block the roads, which also shows why the town of Gettysburg is so important, with all these roads snaking in and out of it. So let's see the Union move for 9 a.m. Okay, here's a view showing you how important strategic movement is in the game. Now that's Rowley's brigade that came up from the Ninemaker Hill Road. You can see he's now on the Fairfield Road, protecting the Union's left flank. So that's Devon and Gamble, again, carefully staying out of range of Heath's division. That's Reynolds' headquarters. And these are the 2 brigades of Meredith and Cutler, Wadsworth's division, coming up here at Seminary Ridge. So the game is pretty good at following history, if you want to play it historically. So I'm quite pleased with that. Also, I'm quite pleased with the order of appearance research, as I mentioned. Now, over here, coming up the Emmitsburg Road, is the brigades Paul, Baxter, and Stone, along with Wainwright's artillery. So I would say within a turn or so, we'll probably have combat, because there's only so much falling back the Union can do. Somewhere along the line, they're going to have to fight and take Heath's division on. Okay, at 9 a.m. the Confederates get a new division. That's Pender coming on, and they specifically state on the order of appearance chart that the division only has 1 movement point, so it's just going to be coming up, deploying in the rear here. Meanwhile, of course, Heath will advance, and let's see how close he can get to Devon and Gamble over here. Okay, the rules specifically state that units cannot stack when they come on, so Pender, you can see, is coming on in column here. And over to the right is Heath's division, again boldly advancing 5 squares right in front of Devon and Gamble. So at this point the Confederates aren't too worried about these 2 brigades. But they do have to watch out for Rowley's single brigade coming up here on their right. So I would say within a turn or so we're probably going to see combat. Okay, these are the Union positions after the 10 a.m. turn. And Cutler and Meredith are here, Devon and Gamble, and that's Rowley. They've deployed in a long line, and for the first time, They are now within range, combat range of the Confederates, should they choose to attack. I've tried to make their line as strong as I can. Remember, the cavalry are doubled in this game on defense. So they've got a fairly good line, and Pender's far enough back that he can't come into combat right away. Also, we've got some more Union brigades coming up here on the Hagerstown Road, and just to the south of the town, General Howard has arrived here. So the Confederates will look at their options for the 10 a.m. turn. They don't get any new troops till noon. The question is whether they will attack this turn. Now, attacking in this game at 1-to-1 is a chancy thing, and if you are repulsed, your units are flipped to the reduced side, and you're considered shattered and can't do any more attacking for the day. So this game is pretty realistic in showing you that once a brigade had attacked and had been repulsed, it was pretty well spent, and I think that's accurate. I think a lot of games you just keep attacking and attacking and attacking, and you don't care about fatigue or anything. This one covers that fairly well. When you make an attack, you really have to think about it, because if you're repulsed, that brigade is out for the rest of the day. Let's see what the Confederates can do for the 10 a.m. turn. Well, I didn't do too bad a job of deploying the Union, because the Confederates don't have a heck of a lot of options. So I decided to concentrate these two brigades, Pettigrew and Davis, along with Pegram's artillery. They've concentrated here on the center, and they're going to hit Devon. And it works out to only a 2-to-1, because remember, cavalry are doubled. And down here, the Confederates have got to watch their flank. Now, they do have the superior numbers, so their line is longer than the Union, and that long line is eventually, going to cause the Union a lot of grief, I think. But we're going in with our first attack now. It's 2-to-1. There are no modifiers because they're both on equal ground. So let's roll the dice and see what happens. Okay, 2-to-1. And the Confederates have rolled a 4. And that gives an exchange plus a DR result. So Devon must flip to the other side. And for some reason I found it more efficient to have the artillery take the beating. I don't know how historical that is, but we'll have Pegram flip over, so that qualifies for the exchange result. And the brigade of Devon now has to retreat back 2 squares, I believe. I'll just check that. Yes, checking the retreat rules, it is 2 hexes, so Devon falls back 1, 2 to there. Now the Confederates can advance, I believe. I'll check that to see if you can. Okay, now the advance rules are a little bit more complicated than some other games I've seen. It specifically says a unit can advance 1 hex into the vacated hex or to an unoccupied hex adjacent to the vacated hex, as long as at least 1 advancing unit occupies the vacated hex. So technically, the Confederates could move 1 brigade, let's say Pettigrew there, and the other brigade there, because that still qualifies. Well, shattered units are not allowed to advance. Well, I'm going to try it out and see what happens. So Davis occupies the originally vacated hex by Devon, and Pettigrew advances into the hex adjacent to that, putting the onus on the Union to really counterattack next turn or fall back. So that's the end of the first combat. At 10 a.m. the Confederates got an exchange but advanced. Now when Devon retreated, I forgot to mark it with a disorganized 2 marker, so we placed a 2 marker on there, although the effects of disorganization and shatter are the same. Now that means in the Union turn, since shattered units cannot attack, Devon will have to fall back from Pettigrew's position. Okay, at 11 a.m. the Union gets some new troops, part of Howard's Corps here on the Taneytown Road, and again part of Howard's Corps on the Emmitsburg Road. Another thing I like about the order of appearance, again, is because it's accurate. Howard's Corps was split, and it did arrive on 2 different roads. Some games don't get that correct. So up here in the north, the Union are going to have to correct their line. Let's see what they can do. Okay, That's about the best I can do for the 11 a.m. turn for the Union. They've again straightened their line. I had Devon fall back. We replaced the 2 with a disorganization 1 level marker, and I've reinforced it with the Paul's Brigade. So they've got a continuous line, and they're anchoring it there with a nice solid defensive 12 with Gamble. Howard is near the town, and of course we've got the 2 Union divisions marching up the Taneytown and Emmitsburg Road. But the Union are very hard pressed now, position-wise, because I think the Confederates can outflank them. But it's not a cakewalk for the Confederates. Let's see what kind of odds they can bring to bear against the Union line. Okay, as I study the situation is not as rosy for the Confederates as I first thought. The Union has a lot of power up there. So much power that the Confederates even have to worry about a possible Union counterattack. Anyway, they've straightened their line here to conform with the Union line. But here they were able to bring enough power to risk 2 attacks. Not the best ones, but worth a try. Over here they've got Perrin and Scales attacking Rowley. It's a 2-to-1 odds, but Rowley has high ground, so there'll be a modifier to the die. In the center here they've got Davis and Pettigrew, 17 factors against Cutler's 7, which is again a 2-to-1 attack, but once more Cutler has the high ground. So we've got almost the equivalent of 2 1-to-1 attacks. A little risky. Let's see how these go. Now, checking the die roll modifiers, I feel they must have got these reversed, because all the pluses should be minuses and the minus should be pluses. Anyway, I'll assume that's incorrect, because this table wouldn't make any sense otherwise. So we've got a 2-to-1 here, Rowley. And the Confederates will have to be adding 1 to the dice. So 2-to-1, let's roll the dice, see what they get. 2-to-1 with a 6, that's just about the worst thing they could have rolled. And 2-to-1, that actually becomes a 7, which is A1, which is not good for the Confederates. So that's this attack here. They've got an A1, which means they lose 1 step. No retreat though. Alright, so well, it's better to lose a step off of Scales. So Scales flips to the shattered side. And then we go on to the next attack, which is also 17 to 2-to-1. Again adding 1. Let's see what the Confederates get here. My God, 2 6s in a row. Well, that's really bad news for the Confederates. That's another A1 result, which in this case will flip Davis. So we've got 2 shattered units there. Now I just have to check to see if they get a demarker, because I think the demarkers are only placed on retreated units, not shattered. Let's find out. The rules say that units only get a demarker when they're retreated. So in this case, the Confederates won't get a demarker. But for all intents and purposes, those 2 brigades are out of action for the entire day, at least in offense. So that was a very good defense by the Union, and some very bad luck on the Confederate part. So let's move on to the noon turn for the Union. Okay, there's the situation after the 12 noon turn. The Union has just moved, and they've got a continuous line. Their left flank here over in Seminary Ridge, going up Seminary Ridge and across to the town. That's Howard's 11th Corps. And they've got Steinwehr's division coming up the Taneytown Road. So the Union have certainly stabilized their line, and I think the Confederates are going to have a tough time cracking it. They may have to wait till their divisions come in from Carlisle and Harrisburg. Okay, that's the situation after the 12 noon turn for the Confederates. And I looked at the situation pretty carefully, and the Confederates can't really do any good attacks along the front. The Union have a pretty good strong line there. Now they have a whole division coming on at 1 o'clock from the Bendersville Carlisle Road here, so I think the situation will change then. But the Confederates hold off. A bit of a lull in the fighting there. Okay, for the 1 o'clock turn, the Union doesn't have to move their forces too much. They extend, they bring up Steinwehr's division here, and they extend their right, and they bring Gamble over to guard the roads to the east. I guess I could have made a little bit of a correction here on the left, but since the Confederates only have a shattered brigade there, I don't think the Union has to worry too much. So we'll proceed now with the 1 o'clock turn for the Confederates. Okay, for the 1 o'clock turn, the Confederates don't do too much. They just bring up Rhodes' division, and Rhodes comes on with only 4 movement factors, so he deploys across the Carlisle Road here, opposite the 11th Corps. Now at 2 o'clock they get another division from the Harrisburg Road here over on the right, so they might be able to do something then. So we're on to the 2 o'clock turn for the Union. Okay, for the 2 o'clock turn, the Union make a few adjustments on their left, extending their left to opposite the Confederates. A few little adjustments here, and extending the line still, and beefing up with a part of Steinwehr's division. They feel confident that they can hold off the Confederate attack. Let's see what the Confederates do for the 2 o'clock turn. Okay, at 2 o'clock, Early's division comes in from the Harrisburg Road over here. Now, I mentioned before that one of the things I liked about this game was the order of battle and the order of appearance. It's a fallacy that Lee did not have any cavalry with him on the first day at Gettysburg, and that is not true. He actually had Jenkins' division of cavalry. It was traveling with Early's column. Now it's true he did not have Jeb Stuart. That's whom he missed the most, the cavalry leader, Jeb Stuart. But he did have cavalry, 1 brigade. Not very much, mind you, and maybe not the best cavalry in the Army of Northern Virginia, but cavalry nonetheless. So Early's division comes on with only 4 movement points, and Jenkins with only 1 movement point. So Early will begin to put some pressure here on the Union right. Let's see what they can do. Okay, for the 2 o'clock turn, Early's division arrives here and deploys in line over near this little gully here, and Jenkins' brigade of cavalry starts to flank over here. So for the 3 o'clock turn, the Union finally should feel the pressure along the front. Let's see what they can do. Okay, for the 3 o'clock turn, the Union, in a bold move, keeps their line and extends it to the right, and they've got Gamble over here. So they feel pretty confident they can hold off a Confederate attack. So the Confederates, this turn is kind of a do or die. They're going to have to decide whether they're going to assault that Union line or not and lose the initiative. Now at 3 o'clock, they do have another division coming up there from the Cashtown Pike, Anderson's division. Let's see what the Confederates can do to the Union line this turn. Okay, because it's getting late in the day, the Confederates decide to do some attacks all along the line. They use Early and Rhodes' division and part of Heath to assault all north of town here. Now they're not the greatest odds, but they feel they have to put some pressure on the Union or else the whole momentum will be lost. At the same time, Anderson's division comes up from the rear, accompanied by Robert E. Lee himself and Longstreet. I think that's technically an error. If I recall correctly, Longstreet didn't arrive on July 1st till later in the evening. Lee himself arrived again only late in the afternoon, 3 o'clock. So you can see much of the battle of the first day was fought with Lee's presence not there. So let's take a look at these assaults all along the line and see how they go. Maybe the Confederates will have better luck than they did in those other assaults. Okay, Avery's brigade and Gordon's brigade engage in a 11-4, 2-1 attack against von Gilsa. Now von Gilsa is on higher ground, so it's 2-1, but they will be minusing 1 from the dice. So let's see how that, or rather adding 1 to the dice. Let's see how that attack goes. 2-1. They finally got a good roll. That becomes a 2, which is DR plus D1. So von Gilsa takes a step loss and must retreat 2 squares. 1, 2. Now Avery and Gordon can advance, and since the Confederates want to make their push now, Avery will occupy the original space and Gordon will take the space beyond, which is allowed by the rules. We also must mark Ames' brigade with a 2 marker. Okay, for the second attack, we've got a 1-to-1. It's Iverson and Doles attacking Coster and Smith. So it's a 1-to-1, no additions or subtractions to the dice. Let's see what they get. 1-to-1, they're lucky again. 1-to-1 with a 1 is defend a retreat and lose a step. So we'll flip Coster, and he'll have to go back to there. Smith will join him, and Iverson will do the same thing. Iverson will occupy the spot, and Doles will continue to advance beyond. So they're beginning to crumple the Union right there. The next attack is Carter's battalion, supported with Daniel and Ramser and O'Neill. So you got 10, 13, you have a 20 to 10. It's another 2-to-1. This time they are on, the Confederates are on higher ground. Let me just check to see if you get an advantage for being on higher ground. Yes, you do get an advantage. So it's going to be 2-to-1 minus 1. And they roll a 1 again. So the Confederates got some good luck finding 3 1s in a row. That becomes a 0. And that's a DR plus D1 again. So the Confederate assaults are working all along the line. We'll have them flip Osborne's artillery this time. He'll go back 2 squares. Schurz will go back 2 squares. We'll occupy with a Ramser, and O'Neill will push on to that square. So we've got a Confederate breakthrough on the Union right. Now they're hitting the center. And we've got to have a few low odds attacks here. Here's one of them, I think. Archer and Thomas, 8 to Kuzinowski, 5, 1-to-1. Let's see what they roll again. 1-to-1. Aha, this time they roll the other end of the scale, which is a 6. And that's the AR plus A1. So Archer gets dinged, he's flipped back 2, and Thomas goes back with him. And we have to mark that with a 2 marker also. Alright, another attack here. Baxter defending with 5, and we've got Pogue's battalion with Breckinridge. That's a 6-to-5. It's a 1-to-1, but the Confederates are on higher ground. So they will minusing 1 to the dice, 1-to-1. They roll a 5. That becomes a 4. And that's A1. So the Confederates are repulsed there. Pogue will flip. And it doesn't say retreat, it just says A1. So that's the end of the attacks at 3 p.m. The Confederates have had some success on the right and some failures in the center. It'll be the 4 o'clock turn next. What can the Union do? Okay, for the first time, Union reinforcements are coming in through the Baltimore Pike. That's the advance of the Union 12th Corps. Of course, we'll march up the Baltimore Pike and get into the fray south of town. But let's move the Union line to see what they can do to correct the fiasco they had on the right. Okay, for the 4 p.m. turn, the Union line is beginning to take the shape of the fishhook line that the Union historically had. The 12th Corps is coming up the Baltimore Pike. The Union have fallen back to just the south part of the town of Gettysburg and are spreading out to the right. And they're still anchoring their left over here on Seminary Ridge. So it's looking pretty good. There's only 3 turns left of daylight. No, actually 4. So the Union have got to hold on for 4 more turns. I think they can do it. But a lot will depend on Anderson's division, Confederate division of Anderson, see whether he can be brought to bear. Now, historically, I know Anderson's division did not do any fighting on July 1st. Lee held it back from the actual attack. And sources are not very clear why. But in this game, he could be used very late. It remains to be seen whether the Confederates can make a supreme effort now to capture Cemetery Hill. I've got a feeling they can't. I think the moment is past. I think the Union have got enough forces up to hold the hill. So let's see what they can do. Well, for the 4 p.m. turn, the Confederates just close in on the Union line. They put Rhodes' division here in the town of Gettysburg and move over to Benner's Hill, where their left flank is anchored. And they move their line partially on Seminary Ridge and this ridge over to the west, and Anderson's division comes down this way. All that to say that they don't really have the forces now to make an assault. I'll take a look at the situation after the Union moves for the 5 p.m. turn, because the Confederates get another division, this time Johnson's, way over at the entrance to the Cashtown Pike. But historically, Johnson's division didn't approach the town of Gettysburg till dusk, till nightfall. So by rights, if the game is accurate, Johnson shouldn't be able to be engaged on July 1st. So I think the Union have won the right to play the second day. In other words, the Confederates have not won the battle on the first day. We'll assess casualties and points later. Let's see what the Union can do for the 5 p.m. turn. For the 5 p.m. turn, the Union are fairly confident that they can hold their line. They anchor the elements of the 12th Corps here on Culp's Hill and arrange the line fairly historically as they did through the town, in front of Cemetery Hill and down Seminary Ridge. The Confederates at this point are kind of running out of options. It's 5 p.m. They will be moving next. They either have to assault the Cemetery Ridge position there all out or call it a day. They might as well assault, because at nightfall you can recover shattered units and stuff, and they got really nothing to lose. Well, maybe the whole battle, who knows. I'll take a look at the situation and see if the Confederates can assault the Union lines. Okay, the 5 p.m. the Confederates decide to do an assault. There's one good attack going in and another risky one. I think it's a 3-1. So we'll go with 11, 16, 19, 24 to 7. It's 3-1. And they on the higher ground. Actually, they're not. So it's straight 3-1. Let's see what the Confederates can pull off. 3-1. They roll a 4. And that's a straight D1. Not good enough. So Smith flips to the reduced side, and there's no retreat. Now we have this ugly attack here. 17 to 7. 2-1. Straight 2-1. Well, I seem to remember town defenses being worth something. Let me just check that out. Yes, you get a favorable modifier for defending in the town. The bad point about that is if you have to retreat through the town, you lose another step. So it's 2-1. Adding 1, actually. 2-1, add 1. 2-1. And, whoops, we've got a little accident here. 2-1 with a, I guess I should use a dice tower. 2-1 with a 4. Becomes a 4. And that's the exchange plus the DR. Alright, so that means Schimmelpfennig must flip over. We'll have O'Neill flip over. And the Union must retreat 2 squares. The Confederates can advance into this. Whoops, you can't retreat through a town. That's true, gotta go there. Ramsey will take that square and move into this one. So the Confederates are undermining the Union position here in the town. Okay, it's the Union 6 o'clock turn, and I forgot to show the 3rd Corps reinforcements that come on at 5 o'clock. And this odd little brigade from the 1st Corps who comes in on the Nunemaker Hill Mill Road. Again, shows good research on the designer's part. That's an obscure piece of history. Now, up in the north, the Union pretty well have to counterattack now to hold their position. So the first time they're doing a major counterattack against 2 brigades here. Daniel and Ramsar. They do that just mainly for position, because they just have to hold on. So let's do that attack. And these guys are trapped, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens then. Okay, as far as I can tell, if you begin your turn in a zone of control and you can't fight, it says you can move 1 hex, and you can also go into another zone of control. So these units will be forced to go, well, I'll put them there, which messes up Daniel pretty bad. So we'll do this attack first. We'll have all these brigades attack Daniel. So 3, 9, 14. That's enough for a 2-to-1 against Daniel. The Union are on higher ground. I think, yes, they are. So it's a 2-to-1, -1. They roll a 6, the worst they could have rolled, which becomes a 5. And that works out to an exchange, which is going to probably be enough. So Daniel flips, and we'll have Cobham flip. So it's an exchange, but the Confederates are in a really bad way there. And the Union have held their position. Now we've got a 10 attacking a 4. It's 2-to-1. The Union are on higher ground, but the Confederates are in a town. So it's a straight 2-to-1. And they roll a 1, which is the best they could have rolled. And 2-to-1, 1 gives them a DR plus D1. So Ramsar is flipped and goes back 2 squares. And he's also marked with a 2 marker. So the Union have held their position for 6 o'clock. There's 2 hours left of daylight. I don't think the Confederates are going to be able to make much of an impression. But let's see. Yeah, at this point I'm going to call it. I don't really need to play the next couple of turns before night. The Confederates will not be able to make any more impression against the Union line. The Union will certainly hold Cemetery Hill in the turn or so they have left. So points-wise, we'll just add up points and see how we stand. Okay, adding up points just in casualties, the Union have 7 points, and the Confederates have 5. Now, I didn't add up the geographical points, which are, there's several points here for Cemetery Ridge. But all that matters is whether you get 2-to-1 point edge on your opponent to end or win the battle on the first day. So, obviously, the first day, the Confederates have not got a 2-to-1 advantage in points, and the Battle of Gettysburg is over. So I'll zoom in, we'll see the positions a little bit closer. Okay, and there's one of the principal reasons I called the game. You've got the 3rd Corps coming up there, at least the advanced division of it. The Union line is quite stable along Seminary Ridge here. They've held off the attacks on Cemetery Hill, and they've secured their right on Culp's Hill. The Confederates are spread out opposite the Union line. They've got some demoralized units right now that have to recover. They've got several shattered units, and they just don't have enough power to push the Union off the hill and win the game, that's for sure. That's out of their reach. So what I'm saying is the game is pretty good at reproducing history. And overall, I like the game very much. I think it might be fun to play with an opponent and see where it goes. So that's it for the play-by-play of the Battle of Gettysburg on July 1st. That's the Avalon Hill version intermediate game. And overall, a very good game. Thank you for watching.